The goal of every run in Darkest Dungeon 2 is to access the Forbidden Mountain at the end of the road, face the eldritch horrors that lurk within, and slay them. However, simply reaching those antediluvian depths is nowhere near enough. You must also enter the lair of a region boss, terrifying and powerful foes in their own right, beat them down, and claim their trophies to prove your worth to the mountain. Only then will you find the path open to you. So how do you beat these monstrous beings? Well, that's what we're discussing today.
Rise again to reclaim a glimmer of hope from the spreading stain of the Darkest Dungeon.
Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Whether you find my content fun or educational, or you just want to help out a small creator with big dreams, please subscribe and leave a like on the video. Also, if you want to get early access to scripted content like this, check out my Patreon, link in the description. Thank you. From Confession 2 on, runs get longer, enemies tougher, and your path to the mountain becomes blocked without a boss trophy attached to your carriage. The issue with this is that lair bosses are just as capable of party wiping your team as the final boss is, especially if you go in blind or with a team that isn't built to take a particular boss on. So, I went through and beat them all for you, and we're going to discuss how I did so, how the bosses work, what I recommend to beat them, and which bosses I suggest you chase, and what ones to avoid. Remember as well that to get to these bosses, you need to battle through two groups of enemies prior to the boss battle, so try to keep your health high, your stress low, and avoid using items that you want to save for the boss before you get to them. I'll start each section with a quick overview of the boss at hand, what its attacks and mechanics are, what good party members are, and what strategy to use, before showing an example that I used to beat the boss. Timestamps for each boss will be in the video timeline. Let's start with the Dreaming General. The Dreaming General is the boss of the Tangle, and I personally find him to be one of the more interesting and also easiest bosses to fight. The General is a big boy, taking up the first 3 rows of his arena, with the 4th row taken up by a targetable but indestructible taproot. The General is a cadaver-type enemy, weighing in at a whopping 205 HP, so he takes some work to get through, but his relatively low blight and burn resist, coupled with his fairly tame mechanic, means you'll find him not too hard to bring down. The only mechanic in this fight revolves around the taproot, which will slowly try to constrict your party over the course of the battle. Upon entering the fight, it'll add a growth token to each member of the party. Every round, it'll add another to 2 random party members, maxing out at 3 total tokens per character. Once they reach 3, a character will be bound, gaining a strangle token and having their actions restricted to using the encounter-specific Whispering Darkness. This attack inflicts stress on the rest of the party and must be used whenever a bound hero takes their turn. Obviously, this is bad. So, how do you prevent it? Well, by hitting the taproot. Every time an attack hits the taproot, 1 stack of growth is removed from a random hero. This means, to remove all of the growth the root creates each turn, you have to hit it twice a turn. The issue with that is that hitting the root twice triggers a new attack, the Soil Stirs. This marks 2 ranks of your formation to be attacked on the following turn, causing massive damage to the heroes that it hits. This is the case even if you hit the root once over multiple turns. The second hit it takes, period, no matter how much time passed in between the 2 attacks, will trigger the attack if it hadn't already had it prepared. Conversely, if you never attack the taproot at all, your heroes will eventually be bound, at which point you'll be slammed by a massive party-wide attack called Nightmare. This attack deals as much damage as the Waking Dead attack that is triggered by the taproot, but is guaranteed to hit the whole team. That said, it also clears all stacks of growth from the party, so you can at least fight back with anyone left standing once this happens, but the team's not going to be in good shape at that point, I promise you. The General himself only has 1 attack proper, Unsettling Whispers. This attack causes moderate HP damage and, more importantly, 2 stress to the target and some stress to the rest of the party. The only other attacks that the General has are the previously mentioned Waking Dead and Nightmare, and those are really more attacks that the taproot uses. But it is important to note that these attacks ignore things like Stealth, Dodge, Blind, and Taunt. You gotta face tank it or get out. So what then is the play here? You need to hit the taproot, but not too much, and you need to chip away at the boss while managing your health and stress. Well, there's a few tricks that you can make use of here. First of all, it's very important to note that the taproot doesn't need to be damaged to withdraw growth. Anything that targets the root will work, including non-damaging attacks like the Plague Doctor's Blinding Gas or combat items like the Crow's Feet. These will force growth retraction, so I highly recommend planning ahead by stocking up on as many combat items as you can to sneak extra taproot hits in where possible. Additionally, bringing heroes with strong attacks that target the 3rd and 4th rows is a huge help for both triggering the taproot and damaging the general simultaneously. Damage over time stacking attacks like the Flagellant's Acid Rain, the Plague Doctor's Plague Grenade are great here for this exact reason, triggering the root while damaging the boss and applying Blight to him. As far as healing is concerned, it's really kind of dealer's choice here. The Vestal is always nice thanks to her meaty heals, consecrations, and her ability to hit both the boss and the root with Judgment. However, if you have a Plague Doctor for the Blight application and root targeting, she could also pull double duty with her heals. For stress, Jester makes for a nice option with his stress heals and bleed skills for boss dots, whereas the Man-at-Arms could also work for stress heals, but he has relatively low damage and the inability to reliably hit the back line to trigger the taproot, which kind of makes him a worse pick, in my opinion. Ultimately, the General can be handled by many different teams with many different functions. The only thing I tend to shy away from here is heavy frontline burst damage like the Leper and rank 2 Hellion, as it's vital to have rank flexible taproot targeting on the whole team, lest you get caught unable to hit it because your backline targeter got rooted, you know? Speaking of, let's talk about that taproot. It's inevitable that you're going to be triggering Waking Dead a few times through this fight by the time you're able to bring the boss down. However, minimizing the hits that you take here will make all the difference between dying an early death and to taking home your trophy. The key thing to note is that the taproot can't stack up triggers of Waking Dead. What I mean by this is once it uses the Soil Stirs, it can't use it again until after the Waking Dead attack goes off. You can use this to your advantage. You'll want to start the fight by applying dots to the boss, applying whatever buffs that you need to your team, dealing damage, whatever you need to do to set up the fight. On round 2, you'll hit the root, but just once, to pull a growth stack off of a hero without triggering Soil Stirs. Now, the next attack will trigger it, so you're going to deal what damage you can to the boss, and when the next round starts and the root applies more growth, you're going to go absolutely hog wild on its ass. By wailing on the root multiple times on the turn you trigger the Soil Stirs, you can get maximum bang for your buck by pulling off multiple growths while only being hit by one big attack. This is where you're going to use your combat items. This is where you're going to use all of your rank 3 and 4 dot application skills. If you need to bust out things that just target the root but don't damage it with different abilities, do that. Whatever you need to do, really lay into it to pull all the growth off of you. On the following round, after being hit by Waking Dead, heal what damage you can, poke the root to prime the next round of big attacks, hit the boss where you can, and repeat until you, or he, is on the floor. It might sound complicated to describe, but the flow of this fight becomes second nature very quickly, in my opinion, and makes for a very fun encounter. I've beaten this boss more than any of the others, so I've had a few different successful teams, and here's one example. For this fight, I brought the Hellion, the Highwayman, the Grave Robber, and the Runaway. The key here is that every member of this team can hit the taproot with at least one ability, while still having good boss damage. We didn't have much of anything in the way of stress healing, but my damage output was strong enough, with taproot control being plentiful, that we were able to race the boss down in relatively short order. I give huge credit to the burns and blights from Grave Robber and Runaway, but there are some wild crits from the Hellion as well that do work here. Ideally, I would still advocate for more split backline damage from Plague Doctor and Flagellant, but this just goes to show that a variety of teams can, in fact, handle the General. Just keep up the damage, suppress the taproot when you can, and you'll be just fine. For your trouble, you'll earn the General's Dream, which gives the party plus 200% damage to corpses and immobilizes your whole team, which can be good in certain scenarios, or the Nightmare's End, which reduces all trinket prices by 75% once you mount it to the coach. Next up is the Librarian, boss of the Sprawl. This burn-based boss can be quite aggravating to deal with thanks to his inclination to blind and shuffle the party while hiding in the backlines. When you enter the fight, the Librarian will be hiding in rank 4 behind 3 stacks of books with varying health values. With only 116 HP, this fanatic shouldn't be too hard to bring down, as long as you can keep him locked in your sights. However, unlike the drawn-out slugfest of the Dreaming General, this is a frantic timer battle. The major mechanic to look out for here is the Librarian's Page Burner / Burning Bright combo. Each turn, he will burn one of the stacks of books he's hiding behind using Page Burner, taking off a chunk of its HP. When he destroys one this way, his next attack will be Burning Bright, a party-wide AoE attack that deals big damage, potentially inflicts burn on everyone hit, and gives the boss a dodge token. If you allow him to destroy all of the book stacks, or you accidentally destroy some of them yourself, the boss will ignite, gaining HP and speed, and proceeding to use Burning Bright 3 times a turn every turn, which will all but guarantee a party wipe unless you have him on the verge of death already and can quickly finish him. As far as other attacks are concerned, keep an eye out for Mandatory Reading, a single target health damage attack that burns and causes stress as well, Categorize, which shuffles the party, Burnout, which will push the boss back behind his books if you pull him forward, dealing damage and burning the front row and giving him 2 dodge tokens, and Smokestack, which gives a single target 2 blind tokens, a vulnerable token, and grants the boss, again, a dodge token. Even more so than the general, you need reliable backline damage to deal with the Librarian before he ignites. Moreover, you need to be able to hit hard and fast, as well as work around the frequent blinds and dodges that the boss will apply to himself and the party. Plague Doctor is again a go-to thanks to her powerful blights and the ability to remove burn, increase resistance to it, all that type of good stuff. Grave Robber, being able to ignore dodge with combo tokens, is nice and again has good blight dots, and the Highwayman can prevent extra dodges from being applied via tracking shot. However, you also want to be able to readjust if you get shuffled via Categorize, and heroes with strong movement skills like the Jester and the Man-at-Arms can allow you to do just that. With all this in mind, you do not want the Leper here. I love my boy, he's my absolute favorite, but he's terrible in this fight. Due to his blinds and his exclusively frontline damage, he will be a liability for far too long in this fight, unable to deal any damage to the boss until it's nearly too late. The Runaway is also not going to do well here. She'll struggle to apply burn to the boss, unsurprisingly, and her stealth tactics do little to help her either. Don't spend too much time trying to heal or treat stress in this fight due to the timer you're under. Keep applying damage to the boss whenever possible. Bring some milk-soaked linens, if possible, for clutch blind removal, and you should be able to bring this mad bookworm down. It's going to be stressful for you and for your party. Like, don't get me wrong, this one is really kind of wild, but it is a simpler fight in terms of mechanics than the general is. It can just be a fair bit harder and more RNG dependent. For demonstrative purposes, here's an example team to take the Librarian down. I used the Flagellant, the Man-at-Arms, Grave Robber, and Plague Doctor. Utilizing Acid Rain, Poison Darts, and Plague Grenade, I was able to apply Blight early, which quickly began chewing through the boss's health. I kept Retribution up on my Man-at-Arms as often as possible to get free hits in when Burning Bright would trigger, and once the Librarian was in range, I used Crush to clear dodges and allow my other party members to force Blight through whenever possible. By the time the Librarian had started to attack his last stack of books, he was on death's door, and one more Crush was all I needed to bring him down. It was a quick fight, as this fight typically will be, and I did see my Plague Doctor drop to death's door herself due to focused fire and burn damage, but this was probably my most comfortable kill yet on the Librarian. For your troubles, you can get the Unabridged Edition, a boss trophy that gives you 100% location scouting, or you can get the Complete Catalog, which gives you the ability to apply 3 burn on crits, while also having a chance to inflict burn on your party at the start of the combat. So a little bit of give and take here.